Hi everyone. Welcome to is brought to you by Shush.com, the web's premier porn site for women and couples. I'm Dr. Chantel Tibbles, and we are here live on MindBrowse.com. And we are having a really interesting day today with technology. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting show. I'm really excited. I'm joined here today with Tyler Knight and with Stephen St. Croix. And we have an absent Ryan Driller who may be joining us soon, but let's get started. When thinking about men in porn, we often limit our focus to one key feature. And while working to create hot, compelling content in a variety of genres and tenors is certainly difficult, men performers are also far more than just window dressing and pot shots. We rarely hear about men's experiences as workers or the impact their highly visible and stigmatized careers have on their personal lives. So today, we're going to work towards rectifying that and start talking about those issues. So for today's discussion, we have some outstanding professionals, and we're going to start breaking down barriers. Throughout this event, if you have questions or would like to comment, you can tweet at Sex Talk Tuesday, at Shush for Women, or directly to me at Dr. Chantel, and take this opportunity to engage two really amazing men who've worked in the business for a considerable amount of time. So this is really exciting. So without further ado, let's get started. Stephen, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Stephen St. Croix. I've been in the business close to 22 years, I think. I have left 2 times, so I've had 3 lifetimes in this industry. And I don't know what else to say without sounding like I'm plugging myself. It's weird. I've been around. I've seen some shit.
Been around, done some shit. 11-time Best Actor winner, right? And
Yes.
over 1,200 credits to your name by IAFD. So that's pretty interesting. Plug away. Tyler, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
I am Tyler Knight, and I am a very, very happy passenger in this journey called life, and just having fun, enjoying this. Been in the business for about 13 years. Met Mr. St. Croix in one of my very first features, and just blown away by how astonishing his acting skills are, and having fun.
Yeah, definitely. You guys are actually both known for your acting. Tyler, by my count, over 550 credits, 10 years in the business. And thank you so much. I know you were having some technological difficulties today, and you're actually coming live from outside your office building currently at an undisclosed location. We can see your beautiful headshot, but the people, all of our viewers and listeners right now can't see your amazing mustache, which you guys are missing out. I wish you could see it because it's pretty epic. So let's talk about, both of you have, between the two of you, 3 decades basically in the business. What has changed or developed significantly, that you can think of in your time in the business? Do you want to start, Tyler?
Yeah, the business, in my estimation, has become much more corporate and less of a family atmosphere. I know that's probably opposite of what people think, but it's true. It's one of the side effects of the fact that profit margins are thinner, and ultimately it's run by corporations, and it's becoming more consolidated as opposed to mom and pop different mom and pop studios. And you would actually be able to come in and sit down on a studio owner's chair and have a chat with him or her whenever you wanted to, and you knew all the directors, and when you got to work every day, you knew whom you were working for, and they were your friends, and you look forward to working with them. And there are maybe 3 or 4 directors that I particularly worked for in the beginning of my career that it really wasn't work. Basically, they turned on the camera, and you knew each other by just familiarity. There was shorthand, like when you were moving a certain way, the camera would move with you without the director even talking, and vice versa. And now it's, I'm stepping on sets these days with kids that weren't even alive when I got my first porn video, or directors that were flipping a skateboard last week, with filming with the GoPro. So it's definitely a lot different.
What do you think, Stephen? What are some of your like things that you've noticed over the past 20 years? Changes, developments?
It's an interesting question. It could be a very long answer, but I'll try to narrow it down to two areas. Obviously, entertainment in general, whether it be mainstream and adult, the technology has changed so much so in the last 30 years, and the availability of different channels and platforms in which to broadcast and to view this entertainment has led to what Tyler was talking about, where this corporate environment has come into the industry that had normally been a kind of mom and pop industry, so to speak. With that said, we've adapted with the technology and with the demands for more content. At the same, in the same token, we have also lost an artistic expression that used to be more important than the bottom line. We've lost the familial feeling that we had because we knew the performers that we were working with. And it's become in some ways more of a, almost not unlike the Wall Street, market. It's trading, it's horse trading, it's
Right.
a meat market, so to speak. I'm producing a show right now, and I called about a particular male talent, and the person at the agency informed me that they were no longer representing that person, had not been for a while. And then instead of asking me what was I looking for, said we got a bunch of other dudes available. And I find it interesting that he took no interest in what the product was that I was shooting, didn't ask if it was gonzo or feature, or was it dialogue, was it a story, and that to me shows a lot of the attitude shown by a lot of people where it's just horse trading.
Right.
So these are the two things that I've noticed the most.
It's really interesting. I think it kind of gets at one question I wanted to ask you both about. And I mean, there's so many things to talk about, but one thing that's really interesting to me when looking at content is all the performers' role in creating what you see. And people often don't really pay attention to the guys in a scene as being, conveying enjoyment, conveying connection. And for the two of you who have both obviously seen some content trend shifts, as we've moved from, sort of film-based through parodies, through hard gonzo, into things like feminist porn, romance porn, stuff like that, how have those content trends impacted each of you as performers? Because you're right when you say that it's turned into horse trading in many ways, but it's also not an interchangeable job. So as we've kind of moved through these different trends of content production, how has your work as a performer changed? Do either of you want to jump in first? That's kind of a hard question. What do you think, Tyler?
I'll say this. I completely concur with what Mr. St. Croix said about the artistic dimension being lost. That's definitely true. I can definitely feel that. And it's sad. It's impacted me specifically in this way. When I first came into business, we were shooting things actually on film, big over-the-shoulder beta cameras, and it was an actual skill set that nowadays it's becoming less and less frequent. And there are some directors that are putting out great content still to this day, but unfortunately, it's just individual internet scenes and gonzo scenes that are, disjointed. And unfortunately, there's less and less of an opportunity to show connection with the person whom you're working with, as opposed to just being a beat puppet. And, effectively, instead of being two attractive people like Mr. St. Croix and particular contract girl of the week or whatever, and having a nice scene under waterfall and or whatever, and they have a storyline and they have full developed three-dimensional characters. It's now, unfortunately, two attractive people masturbating with each other's bodies, and rinse and repeat, basically.
Right. That's a
And
really
I think it's really sad.
That's a really interesting way to put it too. Do you see that the trend sort of emerging in that same way, Stephen? Has it lost its like soul?
No, of course, no. Listen, I was sick of this analogy. If a person were to go into a restaurant and to sit down, and the chef basically has a 5-course meal, you really don't know what it is, but each course comes out in time. It has a certain pacing. Your mind is open. Maybe you get a very small appetizer, and you get all these different sized meals and plates and these different tastes. Compare that to going into Sizzler and seeing the buffet, and all the food is out there, and the food is lukewarm. It was cooked like 2 hours ago, and it's just being kind of kept warm with the heating lamps. And you see everything out there, and you're like, macaroni, potatoes, ribs, chicken. I see that in adult entertainment. The eroticism that one notices in their mind when you're with somebody personally is being pushed aside for, let's see the penetration, let's see pink, 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 pink. And I can be working with a girl and be in say a missionary position, and the camera, if the people are only concerned about seeing the hardcore, they're missing all the other elements of the connection. They may be missing the girl's eyes fluttering or tearing up because she's feeling such an intensity between the connection, or maybe she's whispering things to me, or the way she swallows when she comes. You can see her throat kind of move. These are the little elements that I think have much more value in the production of erotica and adult entertainment, and these are missed. So as a performer, as a male performer who loves women and who notices these things when I'm with them, it's a shame that the camera or the director or the people around aren't paying attention. If they're not getting maybe the penetration, maybe moving up to the face and looking at the girl as she's in her state. And these, to me, are signs that I think sexual connection has been lost in the last 20 years. It's become more of an act as opposed to a meeting of two human beings who are attracted to each other.
That's an interesting thing to think about, because it's a commentary on the industry, but it's also a commentary on how the industry is interacting with society. Is there something to be said about what consumers are looking for? Are consumers looking for different things? Why would we be seeing that shift? I mean, it's a complicated question.
Listen, you know what? Let me answer that. You look at the choices consumers want, and the choices consumers are given. When people are given the easiest, most unintelligent way to feed themselves, they choose fast food and doughy pizza and all the things that taste great for that first 2 minutes or 3 minutes, but make you feel like crap and make you look like crap. So no offense to the consumers, but they really don't know what they want. I think we live in an age where easy is considered better. And I firmly believe that a part of the human experience is trying to expand your mind and looking for the finer tastes in life, be it what they may. And I believe that if you just put out good tasting but inevitably low value content, that's going to be the only food, the only entertainment that they think that is available, and they're not going to look for more artistic, more content that's has maybe a richer experience for them.
Right. That's really interesting. So it's an interesting idea about both putting forth stimulus and challenging narratives, but then also like what people will pick up. What do you think about all of that, Tyler? Is there something to be said for consumer taste and, I don't know, porn's involvement in it?
Well, actually, I concur with his analogy. It's fast food and it's instant gratification, but it's less filling and it's less satisfying. And to me, it's much more satisfying instead of having an isolated, close up of, XYZ sex act, to see things in their totality. And I think it's much more satisfying, just going back to, what we were both hitting on, the point we were both hitting on before, to see the connection of people, and within the context of the connection of the people, you can actually relate to the two protagonists or three or four, however many people are in the scene. And with that relation and that connection, it's much more satisfying and more fulfilling. I mean, look, in the beginning, we evolved as storytellers ever since man sat around the campfire and told stories of the great hunt or the great war, whatever. And it doesn't matter if you are, an Aleut up in Alaska ice fishing, or a Wall Street bond trader, or you're some kid in Kansas riding his bike across his dad's wheat fields, whatever. We all know, regardless of our background, we all know tragedy, joy, hope, love, fear, pain, disappointment, excitement. It's the human condition that unites everybody, no matter where you are. And, ignoring that element in any kind of storytelling, and make no mistake, what we do for a living is storytelling. You ignore that at your own peril. And, I believe Stephen is right. I think we have a tendency to pander and not to give the consumer enough credit for being intelligent enough to get it. And I think that's a travesty. And it's not just a reflection in our industry specifically. It's a reflection of entertainment in general, from the literature you read. No offense to these um, young adult novels, whatever, but there's challenging content isn't being produced, and it's infinitely more satisfying.
I'd like to add something to that, just real quickly. I found myself as a man getting older, that I have an intrinsic desire to learn more about this experience that I'm going through. Many people are not like that, and to me, finding my joy and happiness and contentment in my existence here is enhanced when I look beyond my realm, my environment. And I feel that when people do that, and that becomes the impetus for them in their lives, that may only happen when they get older. I think that they'll find more fulfillment. But I don't think a lot of people have that desire. They go through day in, day out, just taking what's been given to them, and then at the end, when they're 40 or 50 or 60, at the end of their life, they're going, "What did I do? Was I really happy with all the things that I was supposed to be happy with?" And part of that is the content that we provide to people.
It's a really interesting, this is a really kind of deeper conversation about the human condition and what it is that we're looking for in terms of stimulation or satisfaction. So it's interesting that both of you seem to be pointing out that this is both a bigger issue, but then also something very, very prevalent in terms of sex and erotica.
Human connection. This human connection is something that we're all lacking. Even with the technology that allows us to obviously be in three different places and talk, and social media, I think that human contact is what's really been missing. And I think we don't have a responsibility, but we have an opportunity to show that in our industry.
Right. It's interesting to think about. Let's talk about a little bit about the mechanics of labor in adult content and porn in general, because that's something I've always thought was really interesting. Putting it bluntly, like the women supposedly are the ones who sell the products. Guys get paid less for a scene. How does all of that work out? Like in terms of like gross mechanical labor, how does that impact men who work in porn?
You mean who works more, the guys or the girls? Who works harder?
Sure. Tell me what you think when I ask this question. What do you have to say about that?
I'll go first, Tyler, if you don't mind. It's
Sure.
interesting because I'm talking with male performers in the industry. I'm producing a documentary film, and that's one of the questions I ask is, who works harder in a scene, the guys or the girls? And the answer to that is really subjective. But you'd be surprised at the answers that the male performers give me, and a lot of times they believe that they work harder.
Right.
And if you were to ask girls that, they would probably say they work harder, but in a different context. Maybe not physically, but the cost emotionally may be more in their mind. I think the cost emotionally is across the board the same for male or female performers, but that's a question that I've asked. Like, should we all get paid the same? I mean, does that ignore the free market concept that we kind of live under, where if somebody is a value and drives more traffic and people are buying something because of a girl or a name, then her market value goes up. She's more in demand. I mean, we're not living in a communist state. But at the same time, who's to say, it all evens out? So I don't have an answer for that.
Right. No, it's really interesting the state of things currently, and it's interesting to think about what the answer could be or just reflect on it. Tyler, what do you think about that? What do you think about ideas of pay disparity between women and men and other aspects of pay disparity and labor disparity that occur in porn?
Well, I'm perfectly fine with this simply because of the fact that besides, fashion modeling, it's probably the one domain in which, women actually are paid to their value, and whether or not men are not paid to their value is a different thing altogether. They're not interconnected they're two separate things. Women should get paid what they're being paid in this industry, and actually, to my estimation, they should be paid more. And independent of that, male talent, of course, should be paid more depending on their skill level. Also, the industry should be a meritocracy in that whatever your marquee value is and your ability to move product, as Stephen was alluding to a moment ago, and for a woman that should play a factor in your pay, which it does to an extent. And for male talent, your ability to bring out the best in said female performers on a consistent basis, that brings value to any production also. It's more than just getting wood. The job starts at being able to get an erection. It's all the other intricacies that happen after that, which includes, if the director's not able to verbally communicate, exactly how to position the female talent, so he or she can get her best shot. And, again, circling back to being able to bring out the best in the female talent. I mean, look, it's a team sport.
Right.
And you look at a basketball analogy, you have people on the same team of the LA Lakers on the floor at the same time, and there's a huge disparity in, say, someone like Kobe or someone that's coming off the bench, playing in the same game. But that doesn't make any player any more or less valuable to the whole effort, because you need every single person to be able to successfully, get the end goal, which is a win. Same thing with this. But that said, women should be paid more, male talent should certainly be paid more, and it should be more of a meritocracy as opposed to anything else.
That's a really interesting thing to think about, because people often talk about how women are paid more than men, and then some women are paid more than other women, some men are paid more than other men, and that's often a really big point of contention. But your analogy with like a sports team, you know, there's that star, but then there's everybody else. It's interesting to think about how that sort of shakes out. Does that impact anybody? Does that have an impact on somebody when you say, "Oh, your sex labor is worth less than my sex labor"? Does as a like
Well,
sort of a psychological
well,
level? What does that do? Sorry, that's a really like big
well,
question.
actually,
Oh,
well, this might be a little bit blunt, but you know, because of the fact that when you hire someone like Steven or myself as a director, you you know what you're going to get. You know that there's a certain level of quality and a certain amount of consistency that you're going to get day in and day out. And yes, we're humans, and I can only speak for myself. There are days where you know I have off days, but no matter what, even in my off days, I'm still able to get the job done to a satisfactory level. And you know that has value. That has intrinsic value. So yes, it's not a matter of seniority that Stephen and I have combined, you know, decades in the business or anything like that. It's what that learning curve has enabled us to bring to the table, that we're known quantities that some kid that you know perhaps is learning his craft doesn't bring. You know, and you know, just looking like a Calvin Klein runway model with a square jaw does not a performer make. I mean, now you have God. I sound like a middle-aged old guy, which I am. Now you have guys that are circumventing the learning curve by you know, things like cav reject and things of that nature, and
can you
because the
expand?
learning curve just yeah, cav reject is for all intents and purposes it's an embalming fluid in which you inject in the side of your penis to be able to obtain and maintain an erection no matter where your mind happens to be psychologically in the moment, and you know you lose dimensions with that as well. um, when Stephen and I were going through were coming up, we had a learning curve. You could actually fail a scene, and it's okay, you know. And nowadays, that's not an option. So, but I guess I'm digressing from point. The point is that what we bring to the table has intrinsic value. So yes, darn right, we deserve to get paid more for what we do than say some guy that's you know getting scenes for $200 or $300 or whatever new guys are getting these days.
Right.
I want to bring up 2 points. I
Yes.
know I learned something when I took some time off and I moved to France and I was doing my own art and selling it. And I had a conversation with somebody who at the time, well, I was trying to learn from, and they said your your price, referring to the painting, uh, no matter what you think it's worth, it's worth what a person is willing to pay. And it was very true. And that can cross over into our industry too. You can, you know, somebody could say, well, I've won X amount of awards, so I'm going to charge $2,000 a scene. Well, if somebody or more people are not willing to pay it, then that's that's how the market levels itself off. But Tyler is correct that everybody does have a value that they bring to the table. And I remember one time speaking with somebody who did sales for Vivid, and they said, you know, the distributors wanted movies with me and at the time Asia Carrera. He said I could sell those if I tell them you and Asia are in it. I could sell them. So there is a value, obviously, in during that time where people who bring professionalism, maturity, sexy, leading man, leading women qualities, it's recognized, and they want more of that. They know that they're going to get good quality.
Sounds really, really interesting. Both of you guys are talking about, you know, I mean, there's all kinds of other dimensions to this, but both of you guys are bringing up this idea of your sort of almost use value and building up a name and what that name, what comes with that name and things like that. And that's really interesting. You guys also both were touching on circumventing the learning curve, in the sense that it's not necessarily as contingent upon one's body and one's like pop performance nowadays, which is also really interesting. Um, when people think about getting into porn, especially as a guy, they often think it's like a dream job and super easy, but obviously there's some issues. But here's a really obvious question that I'm sure people want to know. It's now 2015, and both of you guys have been in this industry for a while now. What made you decide in the early 90s and in the early 2000s, Stephen and Tyler respectively, what made you guys decide to get into porn in the first place?
For me, it was a monetary thing. Real briefly, I talk about this in the book that I'm in the progress of writing. But you know, my background, my mother who raised me, I wasn't given the ability to think about what I wanted to do as an adult, because she was part of a religious cult that believed that the end would come very soon. So I kind of grew up with this thought that I wouldn't live to see 25 in this world as we know it. And the other thing too was that university education was not frowned upon, but it wasn't encouraged, because they felt like the jobs that are the degrees that are offered in the jobs that come out of university would not be of service when this old entire system that they called it the system of things ended, and there was a little bit, it was implied like we're going to go back to living like the Amish with no electricity, and we're going to need carpenters and masons and people to build wheelbarrows. So I never was able to dream about what do I want to be. Now, I love public service or politics, so I was attracted to that, but I didn't give myself an opportunity to go to university to pursue that. So it was a monetary thing. By the time I was 23, I had many different jobs that, just making a living wage. And I saw an opportunity to do something better for myself financially that didn't require a degree. It required me actually to use my people skills, my social skills.
And you do have social skills, it's true. Tyler, how did you get into the industry?
Well, it's funny. He has great social skills, and I'm kind of a misanthropic jerk. But at the same time, I'm a pervert. So it was a great way for me to date out, not date is a bad choice of words, to experience women outside of my ability to experience women otherwise. I was in my late 20s, and I was working as a mainstream print model, and my career was pretty much coming to an end. I wasn't by any means one of the top guys. It was like a mid-level guy. I was making a living at it, but still wondering when, how I'm gonna make it through the next month, because it ebbs and flows like anything else in entertainment. And it's the end of your career when your booker tells you that there's the job, and he starts out by saying, "No one will ever see this. Don't worry."
Oh wow!
So
it's not encouraging.
Yeah, and at that point, it was better than eating cat food. It was for a women's magazine that's now defunct called Women's Forum. They're in Australia. It was basically just a softcore kind of playgirl kissy thing. It was print with me and some pretty girl on the beach, and I kept thinking how easy this was, and how I could parlay this into something else when the phone stops ringing for print modeling, which shortly thereafter it did. I was maybe a few weeks after that coming out of the Hollywood Library, and some guy comes running up to me and he goes, "Hey, yeah, what? Did you ever think about making movies?" "What kind of movies?" "Oh, I think you know." And I said, "Dude, I'm straight." He goes, "Yeah, don't worry. I know people on the straight side too." And turns out that was Gino Colbert, who's legendary director and producer in the gay side of the industry, who ended up being a great friend of mine. And he introduced me to Veronica Hart at VCA. At the time, she was the head of production and the director for VCA Pictures, and she got me my first gig, which of course I failed. miserably.
Just
And
not encouraged.
yeah, I thought it was easy, and I thought that how hard could it possibly be? But it was definitely a shock to figure out that it was actually work, and it takes a lot more than just being able to get an erection. You have to be able to perform well and maintain it and all kinds of stuff, and not pop too soon. And
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Do you
Having
think?
sex in the bedroom, it doesn't qualify
sorry about that.
somebody
Lost my connection.
to be an adult performer. When you have 12 crew people standing around and a schedule, and it's
Dude.
the opposite.
Dude, yeah. I mean, this was back when there were over-the-shoulder beta cameras that were like the size of, like, I don't know what they'll like mini refrigerators on people's shoulders. It was a restaurant scene, and the restaurant was populated by extras who were civilian extras, not even in the industry. And at that point, I'd only been naked in front of, like, God, my doctor, and a handful of girlfriends, and I started freaking out. And Veronica's like, "Don't worry, just take one of these magazines, go in the bathroom, and get yourself ready. And when you come out, we'll shoot." So I'm looking in this bin of magazines, and it was Black Ass or Jugs or Teen whatever, and I grabbed, like, Black Ass whatever, and I'm in the bathroom trying to work myself up to wood. Three strokes, I pop in my hand.
Oh no,
And
that's not good.
I'm on the second floor of the building, and I'm looking out of the window, and I'm thinking, okay, so if I get a running start and jump and tuck and roll, I can probably survive and run home. But my pants were still on set, and I was wearing a t-shirt and no pants, and running around downtown LA with a shirt and no pants is only cute if you're Winnie the Pooh. So I had to go back and tell everybody that I failed, and that was horrible. And
I would have run down there and just threw it on the girl. There you go.
That's not very nice. So, I'm stuck between thinking about Winnie the Pooh and a handful of cum and downtown LA, and like,
That ain't honey.
it's the juxtaposition of imagery. It's the kitty imagery and the horror. It's kind of like Chucky, the little puppet, and with the knife, or Freddy with the nursery rhymes, and and a sick sadistic killer in your dreams. It's kind of that imagery.
do you think that there are men out there that look at the two of you and think that you guys have a dream job and it would be super easy, and if they only had the chance, they could totally do it better?
Oh,
What do you
yeah.
say to people who think that?
So,
I'll let you go, Stephen.
I'm sorry. Yeah, but I look at other people the same way. I mean, when you don't, I look at actors, and go, God, it'd be great to have 45 days to do a character in a movie. That's awesome, and they get paid like a lot of money. But there's always drawbacks to everything, and there, people, we worship athletes and celebrities, and we no longer worship astronauts and scientists and people that we need to have civilization progress.
Right.
But if you're following your passion, or you're doing something you're passionate about, that's always a joy. But there's always it's always something that you don't live their lives. So I think people think, guys look at us and go, oh, they have the perfect life, and they wouldn't be wrong to think that. But I don't think there's any room for envy at all.
What do you think,
Kind
Tyler?
of, sort of.
A little bit of envy.
Oh.
What do you think,
yeah.
Tyler?
It always feels good to to be recognized on the street by someone who's seen your product, because ultimately Stephen and I, we're not stage actors. There's no instant feedback from the audience after curtain. I mean, there's instead of downstage being the fourth wall where the audience is beyond that, and you can see them and you can feel them and use that energy. With us, the fourth wall is the camera lens, and and you kind of get a kind of solipsistic of a feeling that what we're doing occurs in a vacuum. And you know, it's good that you're reminded that it doesn't. That there are actually people at the other end of you know, the internet or whatever that are viewing your product and seeing your work. And you know, that's why it's really cool to sometimes go to conventions or you know, award shows, interact with people. And you know, listen, there's nobility in every profession. It's pretty easy to say that, you know, what we do for a living doesn't have value, but I strongly disagree. I mean, if you're talking about, you know, some guy who wakes up late and, you know, his wife is screaming at him, and, you know, he's driving in traffic, and he's you know, 20 minutes late for his job, spills coffee on his tie when he gets to the office, his boss chews his ass out, his projects are late, he gets back in his car, fights traffic, gets back home to a cold plate of dinner, and kids that tell him what he can do with themselves because he missed their softball game or ballet practice. We offer, you know, a micro vacation micro vacation, a little miniature escape for these people that view our product, and that has value, you know, couples as well. And it feels good when that's recognized.
I agree completely. It's really interesting, and it is also really interesting to think about how infrequently your work is regarded as, you know, having a hugely inherent value. So here's another big question. The state of the industry is really changing. There's all sorts of things happening right now in California with different laws, different health and safety regulations. People seem to be moving in state, out of state, in the computer, on the computer, off the computer, here, there, whatever. The tenor of everything is changing. What do you guys see happening in the next, say, 5 years or so for performers? What do you think, where's the state going to be at for men out there who are thinking, oh, maybe I could do this too, or just for yourselves in particular? Where are we going with porn? Where are we going, Stephen?
Oh, boy. You know, I don't know. I've been in the industry long enough to remember several administrations that have come and gone where there's always the moral police that are trying to regulate adult industry. And I find it interesting that they focus less on gambling and gaming and alcohol and tobacco sales and drugs and more on adult entertainment. So the direction of California politically, I see a knee-jerk react. I see this conservative, certain conservative figures that are trying to establish a beachhead on the shores of morality, and are pointing at the adult industry, saying that we are the cause of the spread of disease, that we are causing harm, physical harm, and health risks to the performers in the industry. And the fact that we've been regulating ourselves quite successfully since I've been in the industry. You look at the number of cases that they bring into their argument, juxtaposed against the number of scenes and the number of people that have come in this industry, we're doing far better than the best Western civilizations or countries right now in terms of the control and mitigating health risks. But there's always going to be a moral element to it. There's always going to be somebody who is trying to court that side of politics. And I think a lot of it has to do with their own agenda to go into public office. So from that standpoint, I don't see California getting better financially in terms of fiscal state. You know, California try to put money in their pocket and they just kind of push it away. So I don't think the people that are in charge of coming up with a plan in order to bring California back to the level that it was as an economy, I don't think they're going to be very effective. And I think they'll drive business away simply just on the terms of higher taxes being asked of people and regulations being imposed on them and being imposed on the industry that are absolutely baseless. They're not effective, and they're really just the product of a personal value system that may be antiquated if you were to look at it in terms of the group.
So things look a bit hazy, like in the immediate future. What do you think, Tyler? How do things look for performers in the immediate future, for guys specifically?
You're talking about talent specifically, or the industry in general, or
Talent specifically, like performers specifically. What do you see? I mean, is there anything, you obviously have like such a wealth of experience, like what does it look like is happening to you?
Good question. I mean, I'm a statistic of one, so I really can't speak of anyone else's experience. But since you asked about my specific experience, it's becoming much more important to recognize the fact that we are not just products; we're also a brand, and to integrate ourselves horizontally with our brand, so that we're not just drawing from one well of income or one source of exposure to the public. And the better we can do that, the more horizontally integrated we are across different domains, the more successful we can be in the future, the better position we are to be in the future. Stephen, for example, has his memoir that he brought out, and he's got a documentary he's doing, and he mentioned he's working on another book, and those are things that he's doing to horizontally integrate himself across different industries, which is increasing exposure as a basis or per film basis. As a brand, it's as a brand you have a lot more opportunities, and that's one thing that I've been trying to pivot and shift towards also is to establish myself as a brand. And I've worked on other different venues also to do so, such as publishing through my literary agent and my show, and bring out a memoir, novels, and things of that nature. As opposed to before, it was just really smart to be vertically integrated, meaning you're a performer who shoots your own camera.
Tyler, your audio is really.
I think there's much more value to be more horizontally.
Tyler's audio is really breaking up. So while it hopefully resets itself, this is an interesting question that I actually just got from somebody on Twitter as I'm sitting here. It seems like both Tyler and Stephen are talking about professionalization. Tyler with a little bit more emphasis on being a brand. But then this is an interesting question about amateur, quote unquote amateurs in the industry. When you think about like amateur produced porn, Stephen, do you see like a difference between somebody with your experience, expertise, etc., and amateur type performers? Are amateurs getting more play nowadays than somebody with that's sort of an actor performer like you?
I don't know. I think it's all subjective. Obviously, what appeals to viewers when they're a fan of my work or a fan of watching me perform is going to be different than somebody that likes watching anybody else.
Right.
As far as, I wanted to mention, Tyler was right about building the brand and basically increasing our sources of revenue stream. When you're a full-time adult performer in the industry, that's really the only thing that I've done in my adulthood because I worked so often. So I did not have other revenue streams coming in. And I did write a book. It wasn't a memoir, just to let everybody know. I did write a book about, my side being a male performer in the industry, and I did that because I needed to speak about it. I did that, obviously, generate some income for myself. But I think that as the market, the industry becomes more and more saturated with so much content, that it's going to hit an implosion point where people are just not going to care. And so building yourself up as a brand, if you bring something to the table, I think is a good way to go about, whether you're a female or a male. But you got to bring something to the table. I mean, as much as it's interesting to follow porn performers, female, male, after a while, people will move on if you're not an interesting person. I think the biggest thing that people could do in order to lengthen their career is to really develop their people skills and really look at how people perceive, not how they perceive them, how do people react when you walk into a room? Do people naturally, are they drawn to you? Do they naturally take a step forward and give you a big smile and stick out their hand? If that's not the reaction you're getting most of the time, then you may have to work on your social skill set. And I'm not saying that I'm better than anybody else, but it was something that I realized when I was younger that was very important in any industry, whether you're a lawyer or you're making sandwiches or you're a creative type. If you draw people to you and they put a smile on their face and stick out their hand and they like working with you, you're going to have an easier time drawing money to yourself. I think people should take an opportunity to look at that and see how people react to them.
It's an interesting thing to think about, like one's sort of inherent draw as an individual. Tyler, are you back?
I am back. I'm sorry about that. Apparently a cloud flew overhead and that was it.
Yeah.
Did you guys hear anything of my answer whatsoever?
We got a little bit of it, a lot of stuff about developing yourself as a brand, and it was interesting because as you were saying all of that, I actually got a question from Twitter from somebody asking about the role of amateurs in the industry. So basically a person wanting to know about a set of performers that are exactly the opposite of what you were talking about. So that was kind of an interesting juxtaposition right there. I wonder, Tyler, can we ask you a little bit, because we talked a bit about Steven's documentary and about his book. Can we talk a little bit about your book that's coming out next year, right?
Yeah, it's something I've been working on since 2009. Mm-hmm. And, well, actually, that's a bit misleading. I've worked on it since 2009 up until 2013. Finally got a literary agent. Literary agent finally sold the damn thing, so that was a 2-year process. And
awesome.
Yeah, we just signed contracts, and the editing part begins, and it'll probably be on the list in spring of 2016. All things going well. And it basically chronicles, the industry from my point of view, my specific, very limited point of view, over 10, 11-year span I've had in the industry. And I wrote it specifically in first-person present tense as opposed to past tense, because I wanted to create a really close sense of aesthetic distance that I wanted to immerse the reader in the experience as much as I could.
That sounds fantastic. I, for one, can't wait to read it. First-person present tense or like conventional memoir, and also Stephen St. Croix's book is very, very, very interesting. Like all kinds of questions you want to know. Derek, I hear your audio starting to get all spotty again, so I'm going to close us up. We're a bit over time, but we started a bit late. Thank you guys both so much for being here. It's been wonderful talking with you. You both are so insightful and experienced and fantastic and people, etc. So thank you so much. MindBrowse shows are.
We should do a part 2.
Do you want to do a part 2?
We should do a part 2.
I'm up for it. I'm up for it. The next one will just me pantomime because you won't be able to hear my voice.
Yes, it'll just be the frozen image in the pantomime. I am down for whenever, whatever. MindBrowse shows are brought to you live streaming and archived free of charge. Compliments of shush.com, the web's premier porn site for women and couples. You can visit them on Twitter at Shush for Women. This has been another Sex Talk Tuesday event. Thank you so much once again, Stephen St. Croix and Tyler Knight. It's been wonderful having you on the show. I'm Dr. Chantal Tibbles, and I'll see y'all next time.
Is a healer. I don't want to give it time. I want everything the way it was before you walked in my life.